Hello and welcome back to Tai'Shar Manethrin, a Wheel of Time podcast. I'm Sam.
I'm Will.
We're here again to discuss the show, do a quick show update for our lovely holiday season, December.
Yes, quite a lot to talk about, actually.
Yeah, surprisingly, kind of all at once a little bit.
I think I said to you sometime, even just like maybe just a week ago, we're not going to have much to talk about, and then
right,
boom,
things happen.
All at once.
So being a show update pod, if you have not finished the books or you are allergic to spoilers, please join us when we next convene, whenever that shall be, because all things are on the table for this podcast to discuss, since this is a show update. So this will be spoilerific. So consider yourself warned. All that being said, Will, if you'd like to take us away.
In the way of unofficial updates, so filming has stopped again. It has, but
sad.
We haven't gotten like official word on that, which is a little odd. It appears it stopped back maybe at the beginning of last month, so it like happened like right after our last show update. Daniel Green of Fantasy News claims that his sources, whoever they are, say that they only have pickups left to shoot. If you're not familiar, pickups are the shoot after the principal photography, which is everything that they plan to shoot. And then pickups are when either there's a scene that they've decided to reshoot or a scene they realized that they needed to add. Typically, this is not a ton of stuff. I don't know. Far be it for me to question him, since he's spoken with Rafe himself and interviewed Sarah Nakamura. But by my figuring, they have at least a month of like good old principal photography kind of left, based off of the amount of time that they've spent shooting. I mean, either way, they're not going to be done yet. So it kind of is inconsequential how much they have left at this point.
Right. Whether or not it's pickups or just like regular photography or shooting left to do. Yeah. Then they still have plenty to do.
Right.
Got to get the people back together.
So according to a translated post from the agency in the Czech Republic that's handling extras for, I think, most of Amazon's shows that they're shooting over there.
Interesting. That makes sense.
Project that they just refer to as W will resume in April of 2021, which feels like a million years away now. Also, unofficial updates, several rumors have indicated that some kind of filming is taking place in Spain that it has to do with the Wheel of Time. None of the leads have been seen there, but one translated blog post lists locations of Alcazar's Gate, Waterwell's Terrace, Muslim's Terrace, and my favorite theory so far on this is that these are actually Logain scenes, like maybe flashbacks or something like that, which might be taking place in his home country of Gildan, which would make sense since Alvaro Morte, the actor playing Logain, is himself Spanish. So you could have all the Gildanans be Spanish.
Sure. Yeah, it makes sense with Logain being swarthy.
This isn't really an update. It's basically a rumor, and we don't learn much from it, but we learn from some of the other rumors that have come from it. So anyway, according to the Wheel of Time YouTuber Nableth, on some Wheel of Time Facebook group, I'm not quite sure which one, someone claimed that they got to preview the first 3 episodes as a part of an Amazon survey regarding upcoming content. And at first I thought it was kind of unlikely. Like maybe they were just, I don't know, trying to get attention or something. But there was one user on the Reddit post about this who confirmed that they received a survey from Amazon where they said one of the questions was, do you have time and would you like to watch 3.5 hours of an upcoming MA drama? And then they asked him several more questions, and one of them was, are you a fan of the Wheel of Time? And they think that because they answered yes, they were excluded from watching it.
Dang. You should have lied.
Right. So that makes it seem more plausible.
Reminds me, there was like a Reddit post where somebody claimed to have seen an early viewing of Batman v Superman. Back when no one really knew, what kind of movie it was going to be, and they were like, "Guys, this is going to be awesome. It's so good. It brought tears to my eyes." I mean, I don't want this to be a similar situation, but I remember reading that review and thinking, "Yeah, I can't wait to see this movie." And then I saw it.
Well, what's funny is like, 1% of people went to go see that movie and totally believe that that was just incredible genius movie.
Oh yeah, of course.
And
Yeah, yeah.
so it's also possible that he thought so. Here are um, the messages. This person says, "This is the reason I joined this group. I just finished watching the preview of the 3 episodes. Had never heard of the books. Not a huge reader myself, but honestly, this series will be good. Obviously, can't share any other details. Who knows? I've never been a book reader, so I doubt it, but I'll research and read stories summaries if I find them. Open to suggestions if anyone knows on reading a summary of them. I've been doing research surveys for Amazon for years now. Seen so many different series previews. Have to honestly say that this has been one of my most exciting ones I've ever previewed. After reading up on the story and reading the synopsis of the first book, they're really doing a good job of it."
Heck yeah. All right.
That sounds very positive, but
I'll take that. I'll take that shred of hope,
yeah, I'm also just cynical enough to be like, Amazon paid somebody to say that, but I don't think that's like,
Yeah, it's like that, or somebody just wants like an attention on the internet. I would say internet
Right.
points, but Facebook group, you're not like getting upvotes or anything. So
yeah, I don't
seems
I
like
don't-
less than, somebody posting to like Reddit, some
Right.
general subreddit, and like trying to get karma. But
Right. It is funny how people can still manage to get "I want attention."
for
I'll say
sure,
this.
yeah,
I think it seems likely to be true. And so,
sure. And it's still, and like you kind of like what you said about the dude about Batman v Superman. At the end of the day, it's one dude's opinion. Like, okay,
Right.
maybe he's been doing this a lot, for years, but it doesn't mean it's good, even if he thought it was good. But it might, but it doesn't, it certainly isn't bad that one random dude on the internet thought it was good.
right.
That's
Yes.
about as
No,
far as
yeah.
I'll take it. It's not bad that dude liked it. That could be good.
Right. The main thing that we learned from that is that one dude liked it, maybe.
Yeah. This is what we're left with, Amazon, when you don't give us anything until now.
Don't worry. Yeah, don't worry. We're going to have plenty to talk about in the next section. But before I leave this, I would just like to say that I was more intrigued with the other guy who confirmed that he also got the opportunity to watch it, but because he was already a fan, that he was denied it.
They didn't want his opinion.
Right. But what's interesting to me is, either way, that seems to confirm that a cut of the first 3 episodes exists.
Yeah, it's watchable.
So there's that. B, if the second guy that commented on the Reddit post was accurate, he said 3.5 hours. So that means that the first 3 episodes average 70 minutes.
Yeah.
Which could be indicative of the actual length. Could also be like, this is a first cut and they're getting, people's feedback.
Yeah, I mean, you could see that being possible if they really want their own Game of Thrones. Certainly plenty of Game of Thrones episodes went beyond 60 minutes. I mean,
yeah,
albeit typically in the later seasons when they were trying to finish up quick. But in this case, we're trying to get through the first book quick. And it's a big old book. So you could certainly make an argument for long episodes.
The last little bit that we can mine out of this is that the show that they would have been reviewing, the guy who didn't get to, would have been rated MA. So
right.
This isn't surprising it a bit. We've said it for a while. It probably would be rated MA.
Of course.
But this is
especially if they're going for their own Game of Thrones, and given the content of the books, not surprising.
I'll be interested though, considering the first book is relatively tame.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
I'm curious about how that's going to play out, but actually I have more thoughts on that in responding to the official update. So we'll start with the smaller, less to talk about, bigger in some ways of the two big updates that we got: the crafting of the blade video.
Yeah, it's like the closest thing we've gotten to official footage, even though it's still not official footage of
Come
like it's
on,
not
guys.
actual like footage of the show. Like, come on, just give us just 10 seconds. I don't know. But it
Uh,
is something.
Probably the thing that has gotten the most discussion about this video is the fact that there doesn't appear to be a heron on the hilt of the heron mark blade, which would present a problem with Rand being marked by the blade heating up and the.
Right, right.
But I think Daniel Green pointed out the way it's laying that there could be a heron on the opposite side from what we see, and assuming he was holding it right-handed, that it
Yeah,
it
you
would
just
be.
it's hard to picture that being a detail that they missed or purposefully omitted. I mean, maybe, I guess, if they just like couldn't picture how it would like practically rest on the handle. I don't know, but yeah, that is
Yeah,
interesting that you'd think that that'd be something they would show us here, but who knows?
yeah. I mean, it's on the blade, and so
Yeah,
it's
right.
a heron mark blade, which is what they're referred to as, not a heron mark sword with a heron on the hilt. So,
Right.
which I know it's obviously there's got to be a heron on the hilt for him to get burned that way, but it's also possible that I don't know he gets burned by the blade somehow. I don't, and there's options here. So that's not one that
Yeah.
I'm going to get too wrapped up in. Of course, we're too early on. I mean, it just goes to show you how part of the reason why they're probably so careful about leaks and what information they put out is how people will dissect just the
Oh yeah.
smallest thing. So,
Yep.
you know,
Right, because yes, and if they put out like an actual clip, people would jump to wild conclusions about every second of it.
right, exactly. And looking at it, it's clear that there's a big emphasis on production design, which is also and well, I guess we'll just go ahead and go into the other thing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's
The Q and A
pretty
with
clear.
the Q and A with Rafe, where he asked fans on Twitter to ask him questions about production design.
And
Um,
give some pretty interesting answers.
yeah,
For sure.
and so I've been fighting a sinus related cough, and so since everybody's afraid of coughs now, I've been trying to talk less
I
uh,
hear you.
to keep my voice from getting worn out. So I'm gonna let you read half of them, and I'll read half of them.
Okay,
So
sure.
I
All
got them
right.
labeled. So
So
I'll
yeah,
let you
first
start.
question here. Twitter or someone on Twitter, I guess, says, "What balance are you striking between recreating what's in the books word for word and letting the artists have creativity?" Rafe responds, "What's really important to me is that when we're diverging from the books, that we know we're doing it. So every piece of production design, from shoes to swords to the White Tower itself, begins with pages of quotes from the books about that place thing. The designer then takes it from there to build something that makes sense in our world with our production concerns, our cast, our aesthetic, etc. But at the end of the day, it all stems from that first document, and it's something we can always go back to." Yeah, I like that. I mean, that as we've said repeatedly when we're talking about this adaptation, that there's a lot of source material. It's good. We're doing a podcast about it. We think it's good,
All right.
but I'm certainly not married to them doing a play for play recreation. And so I think this
Right.
concept, this holistic approach, practically speaking, as long as they always do refer back to the source material and try to be true to it, is fine. And this is something everything he said came back to me that ultimately all sins can be forgiven if it's good.
Yeah.
Like ultimately, like I don't care a lot about specific decisions you make about cutting things or adding things if it's good. Like if it's
Yeah.
wildly different from the books, I will have a problem with that. But if it's different in little ways and in ways that make sense and it's good and those are good differences, sure, go for it. I think that's fine.
Well, I think I think the example you get is like the Two Towers versus basically the whole Hobbit trilogy.
Right.
Of the Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers diverged the furthest. The character of Faramir was pretty different from the way he was in the books, and we get a lot of material that wasn't in there. And I didn't hear a lot of complaints about it. I heard people point it out.
No, it was a wonderful movie. It's a good movie.
Versus, I haven't heard anybody say, man, those changes they made in the Hobbit movie really added. And
we really needed that third Hobbit movie. That was really important that we had that.
Yeah.
Peter Jackson, you poor guy. You really probably didn't want to make those movies.
I know he didn't. And I feel like the whole thing was, oh, you want a Hobbit movie? Oh, I'll get you 3 Hobbit movies.
Give you a Hobbit movie. Yeah. Here's Orlando Bloom. Are you happy?
Yeah.
Dear.
Oh, man. So we definitely don't want that. I saw an interesting interview with a director of the recent Netflix remake of Rebecca.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar. It was a thriller novel that Hitchcock made into a movie and more recently redone on Netflix. I haven't watched the actual movie. This interview, it's on a channel that I follow called Cinefix that I just love. And so I just watched it because I like their content. And the director said something that I thought was interesting regarding adaptation of a work. And he was saying how this idea that if you're making a pure adaptation, then you're going like thought for thought, line for line. And he made the argument that that's actually not necessarily accurate to the book as much as it may seem like it, because what you're doing when you're reading a book is you're hearing about it from one character's perspective usually. And so you're not getting the full picture.
True. Good point. You're hearing their internal monologue.
Right. You're getting their interpretation of things. And so there are times where, because Wheel of Time does so much head hopping, then you feel like you get a clearer picture of what actually has happened. But at the same time, still, these are all people that are wonderfully flawed. And so anyway, all that
there
to
could
say,
be that element of an unreliable narrator a little bit. Yeah, maybe there's something to be said for that always being the case when you're talking about first person or third person limited, that like ultimately you are getting that person's perspective on events, and that can't be completely objective. Just like when we're in the heads of the Forsaken, like they think they're doing great. The Great Lord of the Dark is helping them out. You know, I mean, yeah, they're killing people and stuff, and they're having a good time.
And really, that's what matters. It's that you had a good time.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's what my mom always said after I came in from my soccer games. So, next question. Have you filmed any of the pre-production, design, manufacturing of props, etc. for a behind-the-scenes program? I have to say, I really hope so. To which Rafe said, of course. An amazing team has been picking up as much as they can of the process so that after the show's aired, you can see all the work and love that went into creating these details, large and small. I really hope that they do release like a ton of extra content. Like, one of the things that I've really enjoyed about The Mandalorian is how much they put out after the fact about how it was made. I love that.
Oh man, that's a good point. You look at how Mos Eisley Cantina is like perfectly recreated, and I haven't watched any of that post production stuff, but I just can't imagine like that there was a lot of love that went into getting those details really, really right, and that's cool. Yeah, I'd like to watch some of that stuff too.
It's a lot of fun. And I mean, it's one of the things I loved about the Lord of the Rings extended editions. When they came out, they had a ton of bonus content and just, footage on the set and everything. It was just so much fun to see all that. So I'm hopeful that, after the show, that they have a lot of content out there about how it got made and whatever. And also that the show is good.
Right. Okay.
So that we care about that.
Amen to that. All right. So, question, since we are on the topic of swords, what are some of the inspirations for armor design? Is there quite a bit of variation between the Andoran and Shienaran armor? Answer, yes. Our costume team, led by the amazing Isis Mussenden, started by building a map of the entire Wheel of Time world. Wow. Carved out what each nation culture looked like to make sure they're differentiated in honoring what's in the books, and then diving back into Two Rivers. That's pretty cool. That's what you want to hear, that they're doing their research and they're kind of like fleshing things out outside of the main plot. That's good.
Yeah, which is encouraging. Unlike the one little season of Firefly we got where everybody was wearing the armor from Starship Troopers on every planet that they went to.
Right.
Which is a true fact. Like, by the way, it was actually the armor from Starship Troopers that they were wearing because it was left over and they didn't have to spend any money to get it. So,
Sure.
the differences between the cultures and the way that they look and everything, that's something that I really hope is very clear in the production design. So that is encouraging. Okay, so next question. How do you decide what needs to be physically made, like a sword, and what's going to be effects? And Rafe's answer: I want things to be as real as possible. So, in any place that we possibly can, we've built things instead of trusting to effects. Our show could be all green screen and all CGI, but I think you'll be surprised by how much of it was actually built and touched and held by our actors. Which, of course, that's what you want to hear.
Heck yeah. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
people love to hate on CGI. I feel like, particularly, I think those of us that grew up with the prequels and kind of got a little disappointed.
Bad CGI,
Right.
or even the special editions. Like
Right.
the remakes that Lucas did of the first trilogy, like adding CG to those.
There's just so many examples of movies where bad CGI really ruin things. Having said that, I'm a big proponent for use of good CGI to enhance things, and I think people kind of hate on CGI.
Yeah. I always think of Forrest Gump.
Oh yeah.
I always think of Forrest Gump, and the ping pong ball was CG. I thought that was a nice touch.
There's a really great video on YouTube called "Is CGI Ruining Movies" or something like that, and it kind of shows several places where CGI is being used regularly in film and TV where we don't even notice it anymore.
And that's how you want it. That if they pull that off, then that's awesome.
It's when they do the totally digital characters or things like that we all notice it, or like the big fighting effects, things that where it's super cheesy. And it's kind of explained in that video. But that's a cool video worth checking out sometime.
Yeah, this makes me think of we were just watching the movies that made us, the holiday edition, and it was about Elf. Have you seen this on Netflix? And Jon Favreau was kind of really big on practical effects there, forced perspective instead of doing like the elves in CG. I thought it was pretty good, and it definitely that's a movie that has aged well, and that came out in an era of bad CG. So like anytime that anyone can do that and it makes sense, I definitely am in favor of it. But I agree that CG can be used to good effect. It's it's just there's plenty, as you said, plenty of examples of bad uses of it.
Bad CG, bad.
So, question: weapons and their individualistic characteristics are integral to particular characters, such especially with Matt, Rand, and Perrin. Will the show give a similar focus, or will the weapons mostly just be there? Rafe's answer: you cannot even imagine the number of hours that goes into each person's weapons. I was in at least 20 meetings about the dagger that Egwene has, and that's not even a major weapon in the books. There's a whole team of people, and we have big book fans on the props teams, looking at every item held by an actor on the show. I'd be shocked if less than 10,000 man-woman hours were spent on the design. If less than 10,000 man-woman hours were spent on the design and creation of the heron-marked sword. Wow.
Right.
20 meetings for Egwene's dagger. That's, I hope you're exaggerating a little.
Yeah.
That's, maybe other things were discussed in those meetings, but ooh.
Right.
That's good that you're paying attention, I guess, but I didn't even realize Egwene hardly had a dagger. I mean, maybe for cutting cheese or something.
Right. That was my same reaction upon hearing this, that like, how on earth did they manage to have 20 meetings about a dagger? It doesn't seem possible. But
right, that seems wrong.
Then again, I've been in some meetings about nothing.
Oh yeah, me too.
So,
certainly.
Will there be different styles of swords and heron mark swords, or will all of them be katana style? And Rafe's answer: many different styles. And so that's
good.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's like all we've seen so far. I feel like is katana styles in like the various art production things we've seen. So that's cool. That's good. Be good to
Yeah.
see others. All right. So, question: will Moraine still have a staff at the outset? I know she says it helps her to focus, but seeing as how she just tossed it aside after it was charred coming out of the ways and she never replaced it, it doesn't seem really necessary. Rafe's answer: we're approaching this as an adaptation of the entire series, not just each book individually. So hopefully season 1 will feel more like the entire book series of Wheel of Time than it does like Eye of the World. With that in mind, no more Rain staff. Let chaos ensue. Ha! This is possibly, other than the dagger thing, maybe the most controversial thing he said, I would say, in this.
Right. I think it's definitely something that to talk about, because on one level, I don't care if Moraine has the staff. I agree, it's not necessary. It's a
Right.
it's more of a symbol of her being the Gandalf than it is
Yes.
anything else.
And importantly, most Aes Sedai and throughout the series don't shoot fireballs out of staffs. That's not that's not a thing. That's not a thing that happens later in the books. Generally,
Yeah, and the other thing, when he says this is an adaptation of the whole series, more than it is just a single book, part of me is like, okay, that's good because it'll feel more cohesive, because the Eye of the World feels pretty different than the rest of the series, particularly when you get into the later books.
All right, I'm glad that he called out Eye of the World specifically, because Eye of the World is the weird sort of odd duck out, I would say.
But at the same time, I wonder if that's going to be kind of the excuse for adding more MA kind of material earlier on, because that's because that's the way that he interprets, like, that's Wheel of Time. And I understand that exists, but to me that's not like the whole of the Wheel of Time.
Sure, like,
not to the point.
Let's cut to see what the sea folk are doing real quick. Oh, they're out at sea. The ladies aren't wearing shirts. Yeah, no, that would not be really a good choice.
And so, I don't know, maybe not. I always heard rumors that HBO had a person on staff for Game of Thrones that was like, oh, there's not enough nudity in this episode. Hey, let's have these two extras in the background be naked for this scene. And I certainly don't want that. I don't want if that's even true.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I don't want there to be this like pressure to capitalize off of something that really isn't even a part of the books. Really, obviously, we've talked about this ad nauseum, but I mean, there is nudity, but not almost none of it is sexual. And anyway,
that's true.
So question is, how is the set for the Two Rivers design architecturally? It would seem easy to make it homely and medieval, but because its location and history, are there any other inspirations coming into play? And so Rafe answers, when the books came out, they felt so blazingly fresh and different and new. So we want that same thing to be true of the show. And if you see us leaning away from certain elements in the books, oftentimes it's because audiences have now seen them before. Unfortunately, sometimes, even in cases where the book to screen adaptations are from books that cribbed it from Wheel of Time. Haha.
Fair enough.
I feel like I get where he's coming from and don't like disagree. At the same time, it's like there's times where we want the little cliche, thing that is kind of fun. It's kind of
definitely, don't like lean too far away from it either.
Right. I mean, obviously, the Wheel of Time has a lot that the average fantasy book doesn't, and as he says, a lot of stuff that has come out. I've often said that Game of Thrones, just the title Game of Thrones, is very similar to the Game of Houses, which was first introduced in The Great Hunt, which came out before any of the Song of Ice and Fire books. And so,
yes, good point. Well played.
People are going to be like, oh, this is just a derivative. And I'm going to be like, no, it's not. So I think that's part of what he's kind of addressing with this, is trying to figure out how to deal with the fact that they're going to get compared to a Game of Thrones and probably to a lesser degree to Lord of the Rings. And so trying to avoid that comparison where possible by leaning out of some of those cliches.
Yeah,
Probably not a bad thing.
I think there's still plenty of room for the show to differentiate itself. Like, of course, knowing that there are those comparisons that are going to be made. I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, if you think of examples, there have been, shows like this that have really leaned into having a hard magic system like Wheel of Time has. And so I think that's one way it really can differentiate itself, where something like Lord of the Rings, something like Game of Thrones had magic, had sorcery, but it wasn't, the hard magic system that Wheel of Time has, that a lot of these other novels in like years since, other book series have gone that route. And, there's been other things, other media that have definitely done that.
Right.
But I don't know that there's been an example like this of a TV show, a big budget fantasy TV show, live action, that's done this. And I think that's really can be the differentiator. I mean, it should be.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm just trying to sit here and think about, like, even if it's not medieval fantasy, has there been a show that that offers a harder magic system? I was trying to think, like, more recently, Lock and Key on Netflix. That was an adaptation of a graphic novel.
Sure. Great adaptation, great graphic novel. Yep.
Yeah, I agree. Very good. I think that one has a little bit more like clear rules and everything to its magic system. So, but it's a more of an urban fantasy. So it's a different kind of thing altogether.
Horror fantasy, even. Yeah, that's a good comparison, though. It's a good point. So, question for Rafe: the music, how is that related to the show? Did we just get a glimpse of a theme? Rafe says, this is not the music from the show itself. When it is, I'll make sure you know it, and hopefully will feel very uniquely Wheel of Time. Yes, the bar is set high for an epic theme. That's something we need to get right, please.
Right.
So I don't know. That's good that wasn't the theme, because it wasn't very themey.
Right. Yeah, that was actually one of my first thoughts upon listening to the music from it was, I hope this isn't the music, because it's not really grabbing me. When he says very uniquely Wheel of Time, I'm wondering if it's going to have more influence from kind of a Eastern kind of feel. I guess we'll see. So the question for Rafe was, how are the sword forms going to be presented? Is the style going to be pulled from a specific region of sword fighting, or are they going to be spread out over many regions? And his answer: we have a fight time. I'm wondering, that's a typo or something. I don't know.
Fight time.
Yeah, and Swordmaster. We have a fight time and Swordmaster on the show, who has built a fighting style unique to each weapon and culture. So if you see a Borderlander fight with a Heron Mark blade, it may feel different than a Shan-Chan. That's merely hypothetical, of course, winky face. Yeah, I really hope so, because I mean, I would honestly be more comforted if they actually went and hired different guys to come up with the styles. That just would have been an interesting opportunity for me if it was like, we're going to have two totally different teams from different parts of the world, like get somebody who's like an expert in fighting styles.
Yeah, sure.
From like the Middle East, and somebody from, I don't know, South America.
Sure.
Get them each to kind of invent a style. But I'll take this. I'd rather hear him say, yeah, we've totally got that covered. Although what's he going to say at this point? Nah, man, we hadn't thought of that, but that would be a good idea.
Oh, shoot. I wish you had been here to tell us this, random internet person. Dang it. Rachel and I watched the new live action Mulan this weekend, because I wasn't going to pay $30 for it beforehand, but now it's on Disney Plus for regular free or regular Disney Plus.
You made a good decision
or whatever. Yes, I definitely agree. It was not worth $30. But it was one thing I did like about it was their decision to kind of go the Tai Chi kind of Kung Fu
wire work,
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon route. Yeah, I liked that. It's like, the first time the Hun, whatever, then the Rurons ran up the side, I was like, oh, there's Spider-Man. Oh, wait, no, the Chi thing. Okay, right. It was like, this is not this is not what was supposed to happen. But I wouldn't mind. I don't, obviously I don't want Wheel of Time to go kung fu because that's not what this is. But I wouldn't mind that sword style to be present. The kind of the
Mm-hmm.
Chinese Tai Chi sword kind of flowing movement. You think about some of the names of the forms, you could see them doing that as some of the sword stances or forms, that Land
Mm-hmm.
teaches Rand. That could be kind of an interesting kind of dynamic there. On to the next question, I suppose. What influences were used in designing the travel and daily wear for the EM5?
Emmons Field.
Emmons Field, but also Moraine and Land, considering how they are described while on the road, but how they also appear when in a city setting. Rough-hewn wools, linens, silks, leathers for the warders, etc. Rafe says, in my mind, Moraine and Land have spent the better part of their time together on the road. In the Emmons Field 5, if Emmons Fielders grew up in a place where knowing how to survive in the wilds was a necessity. So they are all incredibly practical with what they wear and travel with. When they're in a city not needing to leave soon, you could see different looks for them. Makes sense. We
Yeah.
definitely get wardrobe changes for the various characters throughout the books, and that's mentioned. So I'm good with that.
One of the things that happens in Wheel of Time that happens in a lot of role-playing games and everything is they seem to somehow manage to pack a whole lot more stuff with them everywhere they go, especially when it comes to wardrobe. Like suddenly they, the ladies all have tons of dresses. Now they'll explain, oh, there's a cart or there's a this or there's a backpack, but I'm kind of actually looking for that to be the case with this, where they have unrealistic amounts of costume changes and different things like that, because there are so many. Of course, famously, Jordan will spend pages describing a dress, and so
right.
We've got to see those dresses, man. We've got to. Otherwise, I'm going to feel like he wasted all that space.
Amen.
So the last one. And this one actually was Daniel Green's tweet at them. He talked about it in his discussion of this Q&A. This is very important. This is a very serious question. He asked, is everyone doing intense calf exercises? Because we need them well turned.
So true. Very, very, very good question.
And apparently he hadn't actually answered it at the time Daniel made his video, but he has since come back. Rafe came back and answered. It says, this one had the most likes, so it's the winner. It says, I can officially confirm, journalists, get ready, that I do not, in fact, exercise my calves, but the actors who are constantly training in all the things Wheel of Time while they're in Prague do. So we can look forward to some well-turned calves.
Here.
That's such an odd thing. I mean, maybe that must have been something
it really is.
In some middle-aged literature that Jordan must have read while he was doing research and was like, okay, well, I'm gonna
put that in there a bunch of times.
Right. I really hope that our female listeners are considering using that as a compliment to their gentleman callers the next time they get an opportunity. Yeah. Excuse me, sir, I couldn't help but notice you have quite the well-turned calf. And then really that would be a shorthand way of finding out if they're a Wheel of Time fan. So you get, kill two birds with one stone.
You'll either get a weird look or a laugh.
Exactly. Well, that's that. And so we're going to move on to our mailbag now. We got some stuff. We got some stuff. This is exciting. An email from Alpha Duck, who used our contact form, which you can use on our website. He said, hey guys, I really like the podcast. I don't know if this has even been mentioned or occurred to you guys, but in Fires of Heaven or Lord of Chaos, the Aiel mentioned that making someone guy shine is more honorable than killing them. This is kind of similar to something in some Native American cultures called counting coup. Or counting coup. I'm not sure what the correct pronunciation is there. Just wanted to say that I love how RJ took a bunch of stuff from different cultures and mixed them up to create really interesting ones for his books. That is very cool. I wasn't aware of that. But that
I
does
had
make
no
sense.
idea that the God Shine was a concept that was outside of the books. I mean, it makes sense, yeah, but yeah, like you, I had no idea. Cool. Thank you, Alpha
Yeah.
Duck, for
Yes.
laying some knowledge on us.
Right. Yeah, and I mean it's so clear that Robert Jordan was very well read and kind of got around these different cultures to include these kinds of details. So I kind of want to look up like what tribes may have observed that kind of practice, because that's interesting.
Kind of want to look up Alpha Duck.
Yeah,
It's a cool name, man.
it's a good one. It's a good one. Over on our YouTube channel, which, yes, we do have a YouTube channel. If you go and subscribe, if enough people do it, then we can stop talking about it, because we can make a vanity URL, and then, I don't know, maybe I don't know. We should probably do one of those things where we say, hey, if we get this number of subscribers, we do this something. But part of the problem is we have lives. And so
yeah, true.
that gets in the way of doing stuff. Jacinta Summers, who I believe has commented on stuff before, I think we've had a few conversations with her. She commented falafel on a recent video. If you recall, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago when we were finishing up the podcast. I just mentioned how we love comments, and you can just comment anything. Just comment and say falafel. And so she took us up on that. So thank you, Jacinta.
Well played.
And later she did add, speaking of this, that she thinks we should do a video Christmas special. Sam kind of teased like we were thinking about doing that, which one day we might. I don't know. Probably not this year. But
right.
I'm going to say definitely maybe another time.
Right. Yeah, at some point. I like the idea of it for sure. It'd be fun. Be fun to do that.
If you guys just desperately need to get disappointed by our faces, so you can go,
exactly.
He doesn't sound the way he looks at all.
Right.
Anyway. And by the way, guys, if I ever miss one that, like, hey, you never mentioned me or something, feel free to message us again, and I'll redeem myself, because sometimes I do miss one, gets through the cracks and I miss it. Kara, who is one of our regular commenters, discussers over on Instagram, sent us a long one, but it's interesting. She says that she had kept meaning to message us about her thoughts on Matt and Tylen. And so she said she read the book when it came out, and that she didn't interpret it as rape, which I was saying, that was kind of like me too.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was the same way when I first read it. Yeah. And
she said it was a cringy read, but it didn't necessarily seem like it was wrong at the time. So she was saying that's my first thought, and that probably not a lot of people at that time even would have called it rape. But, she says today, I definitely see it as rape. Another thought I had is that RJ may have had a couple of motives in writing this in the way he did. Perhaps he was trying to appeal to women by having Matt get a little back from a woman. I think I remember you guys suggesting as much in that episode. Or maybe he was even writing out of a fantasy of his own youth, being dominated by an older, attractive woman.
Man.
I actually had that thought. Like, I wondered if this was something that, like, RJ, that was something like deep back in him that was like, yes,
sure.
She says, I know these books are called a slog, and I do struggle to get through some of the plot lines, but I don't consider it a slog myself. For me, they're just more time I get to spend in this world and with these characters, but I am loyal to a fault. And so it may be clouding my judgment. RJ could do no wrong for the most part. Lastly, I just wanted to say how much I enjoy listening to you guys. I've tried a few other podcasts and Wheel of Time, and none of them have held my attention like yours. I got lucky trying yours first, but had hoped to find another one for when I don't feel like waiting a whole week. But so far, no avail. Greatly appreciate you, Kara.
Oh, dang. Well, thank you, Kara. That was very kind. Lots of kind words. We appreciate that.
Kara, if you're ever just like bored and want to talk about Wheel of Time, you can always message us and whatever. That's fine. We won't have to read every single one of yours, because there's been a few times where she's messaged us multiple times during the week, and I've just replied. So we also had from Siraj Insomnia. He message, and he said, just wanted to let you guys know that you're great, and thank you for what you do. On my first read through of Wheel of Time up to Lord of Chaos, to listen to your podcast after every chapter always brings a smile to my face. All the best from the UK, Siraj. So
Nice. Cool.
yeah, that was cool. I know we've got folks in the UK. I realized I made a faux pas and wished people happy Thanksgiving, I think last week. And I was like, oh, we have a good chunk of folks that aren't celebrating Thanksgiving.
Yeah, they listen
Um,
to us because for our American charm, they're like, oh, those crazy Americans and their Thanksgiving turkey.
and that's everything from the mailbag.
All right. Well, that's our show for the day. Really, I guess I should have mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, that's our show for a little while. We are both pretty busy with work and with life, and given that it is the holiday season and we finished up a book, we wanted to get at least a show update out given what was going on, but we're probably going to be gone for a few weeks, maybe as long as a month, but please continue to keep up with what's going on, read the books, and we will be back. I do believe we're gonna, before we continue slogging, we're gonna go back and do a real quick recap of Eye of the World and possibly The Great Hunt. So we're gonna do that, and I think it'll be kind of fun. We're gonna kind of get back to that first book and some of the wackiness. I was just I checked it out from the library and remembering that there's an extra prologue that was added when they split it that would appeal to young adults, and it's just Egwene younger, and nothing really happens. Anyways, so we're it's called Ravens or Earlier or something like that. It's very strange, but yeah, it's it's literally just Egwene talking to some chick, and anyway, but yeah, so we're excited about talking about the Eye of the World again, kind of doing it justice, kind of doing it more like what we've typically done. All that being said, thanks for joining us. You can always, as Will mentioned, visit our website at tsmpodcast.com, fill out our contact form, say hey, and we will absolutely mention you in our mailbag segment. Check us out on all the socials at Podcast TSM. And until next time, Tai'Shar Manethrin.